Good afternoon and welcome to Soulful Sundays. And today we have an exciting adventure starting the whole week. We have Dr. Dawn Menge with us. She is an award-winning author, a special ed teacher, and grandmother to a lot of grandkids. Just has a lot of things on her plate, but she's got a lot of things that she's going to share with us. And I think we're going to have an exciting week this week. So today on Soulful Sundays, she's going to kind of give us a little devotional and a little update on like how to follow your passions, a little bit of inspiration and information on what we can do to follow our passions and go as God leads us. So Dr. Dawn, I'll turn it over to you and let you share with us what you have to say about our devotional today.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be on here all week and to talk about all of the different paths my life has taken over the last 10 years. It's really gone a different direction than I had ever imagined. I guess I'll start at the beginning. When I was in high school, I thought I was going to have a business and I was not going to stay home and take care of my children. I wasn't going to do that. And then I met my ex-husband, and within 6 months we were married, and then we had 3 kids. So I stayed home. So when I started going to college, we actually both started going to college together. And I thought, I'm going to be a preschool teacher. My mom was a kindergarten teacher. And I thought, well, maybe I could be a preschool teacher. And so I started taking junior college classes. And part of that classes was a class where you get credit for volunteering or working. So what I did is I volunteered in my mom's kindergarten class. And I took my little babies with me, and so they learned a lot. But she taught me a lot about teaching. And so then I got a job as an assistant in a special needs classroom. And I didn't really know anything about special needs, but I had some great mentors. And I worked in getting my bachelor's, did my homework during my lunch, and got my own classroom. And from there, it's been over 20 years that I've been working with students with severe cognitive delays. And so I think for our Sunday, that would be the focus, is the students and the families that I work with, and my passion to help them and to be there for them. And when I first got married, my brother was the valedictorian of his class, and he went to college, and then something happened, and he had a mental illness manifested itself, not until he was in college. So our family went through some tremendous heartache, and we didn't know anything about, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and we didn't know anything about it at all. So it was so hard to even find out what was happening to him, and I'm trying to get the lines out of my face. And so I have firsthand knowledge of what our parents are going through, of the students that I work with. And that is one thing that we talk about in meetings. The parents have been through so much. Some of them have, they have hospitals and, divorces and family problems, because if you have a child with special needs, it affects the whole family. It affects the siblings and everyone, the parents. It affects employment. Sometimes they can't work because the child needs so much care, or they lose their jobs because they're in they're going to the hospital if they have a seizure disorder, And so the parents are just, when they come to us, they've been through so much already. And so they need to have compassionate people working with them and their child. And so I'm able to say at a meeting, this happened to my family. Mm-hmm. And this is what we went through. And so, yes, we do understand, we do understand what you're going through. We understand what you need. And we're able to hear you, at that point. Some of them are just so discouraged and so tired, and, they're at their last, we don't know what to do. And right. So I'm able to help with that because of my own experiences. And so I think that's a good way to focus our Sunday on.
Fantastic. Yeah, I have actually a similar story. My son is high functioning autistic, and he, before we even could get him diagnosed, it was at a time he was born in 85. So nothing was really defined as to treatment or even diagnosis. And it took me till I was 9 years old, till he was 9 years old, to finally get some support and get the correct treatment for him, because it just wasn't there back in the 90s and things. So
yeah,
it's wonderful that you're working with families like that they need that kind of support, because there's so much that you don't even realize that families are going through until you've been in it yourself. And so I completely understand what you're talking about, and I think that's fantastic that you have a passion to help people get through that, and taking it from your own story and bringing it through to help others. And
yeah, some families really need a lot of just hope, and just like, okay, this is what we're getting, or even guidance, like, what do we do? We keep our students until their 22nd birthday. So a lot of parents don't know that after that there are programs and all sorts of things that they could be doing. So this is why there are, under the federal mandates, there are transition goals that they start after the age of 16. Mm-hmm. And they are employment goals, life skills, training, and community instruction. And so those focus on building the students up so that when they leave us, they might be able to find employment. They can be in programs where they might work with supported employment, or they're doing social activities, all of those things. But that's our job in public education, to teach them and to teach the families this is out there, because sometimes the families don't know. They don't know, what are we going to do after our child leaves elementary or leaves public education? What are we going to do? Is he going to stay home for forever? Are we going to stay home? Like, what are we going to do? And there's so many levels out there to help. Every state is different. So, I live in California, so we have specific laws per California. Some states are for full inclusion within the classrooms. So their special needs children are in with the general ed classes. I have a self-contained classroom because my students are severely handicapped. And so we're working on life skills and vocational skills and academics, and we do a lot of community instruction. And so I was very fortunate when I started. I moved from being an assistant to a teacher, and I took the students that I had been working with in the elementary school, and we all kind of went together to the junior high. And then I was given 2 assistants who were just amazing, and they had the same kind of passions that I did. And we were able to do like all sorts of really neat things. And that's kind of, I can talk about the book a little bit here. I wrote this book as part of my credentialing class. I took a math class and they asked us to write a math book and a math game. So what I did was I wrote this book, but it was called Queen Victoria. And it was actually named after one of my students. And we used this as a play. And we would travel to the elementary schools in our area. And my students would put on these little skits. We called them road shows. And I got a grant through Cal Poly doing it, and we did it for several years. And then I would go back the next day and talk to the children about my students and their behaviors, and they would ask me questions. So it was a way to educate my students and also the students that were watching the plays. And we had a really wonderful time, but we started that when we were in the junior high. That is one of the things that we did.
That's fantastic. It's interesting when you're following your passion, how things can lead from one little thing to another. Like you said, that was your coursework. Well, now you have a skit and you have a book and you have all sorts of resources for other people because you followed what your passion was, and it just kept developing from one step to another.
Yeah, it just I didn't plan any of that. It just happened. It's like, okay, we're going to go do this. And then I actually submitted a little story into the Exceptional Parent magazine. This was way back in, I think it was 2011. It might have even been sooner than that. But they actually published a picture of my students and the little story I wrote about what we were doing in the community. So it was like, wow, that was really neat. And so during the junior high, we did a lot of community instruction. We ride the city bus places. And we had a little business that we started, and my students would make Christmas trees out of hangers, and they would wrap the lights around it and garland. And so we would sell that. We recycled. And when they moved to the high school, we all moved together. There was like 9 of us, 9 students, myself and my assistant. So we went to the high school, and then we really started the workability program. And that's where our students go out during the daytime. We go out and we work in the businesses, and my students are paid to do this. And an assistant is always with them, 1 or 2, depending on what they're doing. So we started doing that. And I live in the mountains, and my students would walk 1.5 miles each way to go to work every single day. And they loved it. And the workers there, they were so wonderful. They would tell us, go sit down, just go sit down. We've got this. And they loved working with our students. And they'd be listening to music. And because I had some teenage boys, and, they were really into all that. And I just, the funniest one was when I had a student who was visually impaired, and he had the dough, and he was putting it in the machine to go through, and he missed the machine, and it went into the back of it, but he didn't notice that. And the worker just kind of went and got it and put it in there and just kept right on talking. So they were wonderful with my students, and we loved it. But at the end of the year, sometimes there's a downside to everything, but at the end of the year, I did a little survey, and to ask, what they felt about it, because it was the first time that this program had been in our little community. And apparently the manager, the owner, didn't know my students were in there, and then wouldn't let my students work anymore because they felt that no one would buy the pizzas. And they said, well, you can put the silverware together and stuff. And I refused to go because my students would know the difference. They would want to know why. They had their food handlers cards. Why can't we be back there, making the pizzas? We've been doing this for a year. Right. So we didn't work there anymore. But, there's a lot of things that, like teachers and parents, they have to fight for and work through to get our students out into the world. Sometimes it's even out into the campus. I've been on campuses where our students were not really welcomed, into the cafeteria or to the assemblies or things like that. And if we have trouble getting our students on campus with other educators, how hard is it to get them into the community? Right. And it is hard. It's hard for people to understand what's going on. And one thing I've done in my books is all my books are based on real people. And so the one thing I've done is I've included disabilities into some of my books. Now, this is a real little girl. Her name is Ireland, and her mom's name is Heather. And Ireland has Rett syndrome. And so the format of my books is each month is a new month and a new person and a new subject. And then there's 7 facts. So I continued with the calendar skills. So this is 7 facts about Rett syndrome. And then this one is Connor. Connor was one of my students, and he has autism. And this is his dad. And it just talks about Connor was using a communication device because he was nonverbal. He could understand you, but he couldn't talk to you. So in this page, Connor is teaching the Queen about his communication device and why he's using it. And it's just a little snippet of a disability and some information so that if the child reading this, or even the adult who's reading it, they might know someone on campus who's walking around with an iPad. And they're thinking, well, how come they get to have an iPad? They think it has games on it, but it's actually a communication device that the child is using. Or if you see someone in the community and they're using it, you're going to know, oh, now I know what that's for. And I know that I'm going to communicate with that child this way. And so it's just a little snippet of information about a communication device. And
yeah, I think it's like I said, you're following your passions with writing. You're finding other ways to connect, to help people connect through your books and through your.
Yes.
So when we're following passions, it's not just what we want to do, but how we can give back.
Right, and that's the best. That is the best way to follow a passion is finding out what you have that can help someone else.
Mm-hmm.
When I started publishing my books and I started working on my PhD, I was already, I don't know how old I was, but my youngest child was 18.
Yeah.
And I was getting divorced. And, you know, things weren't going very well. And he was making some decisions that I didn't want to be part of. So I decided to look at myself and say, okay, what am I going to do for myself at this point to rebuild my life? You know, I lost, you know, all this, you know, a lot of things. And so the one thing I did is I published my book. And when I first published it, I was just going to publish that book. That was it.
Right.
And I started working on my PhD. And actually, my brother encouraged me to do that because when I was in high school, getting a PhD, that would never have occurred to me at all. You know, but things scaffold. You know, you do this, and then you do that, and then that leads to this. You know, it's not like you plan a path and this is what I'm doing. You know, the path goes like this.
Right.
And, you know, and you have to be flexible and you have to say, okay, you know, this is an opportunity and I want to try it. And we can talk about that a little later. But so that's what I started doing. And because, you know, this is what I do for my day job. And so I did add some disabilities into several of my books. And I've also entered them. All of my books have won over 41 awards. And one day I was on Facebook and I saw something for Conquering Disabilities with Film Festival. I've never entered a film festival, never thought like, I don't write films, I don't write screenplays. But I contacted her because I've never done that. And I asked her, can I enter my books because they have disabilities in them? And she said, yes. So I entered this book and this book. It's an astronomy book. And I won the Special Recognition Champion Award for the whole series for the film festival. Yeah. And then I have little book trailers for my books and I entered those and they are winning. And so I mean, I would never have imagined doing that, you know, but because I put my students and my friends' children in the book, I was able to enter. And from there, so in July, I'm going to go to Vegas. We were supposed to go last year, but everything got canceled. So I'm going to go to Vegas in July and there's going to be a red carpet ceremony. And I'm not even sure. I think there's 15 film festivals at this mega fest that they're going to have in Vegas. It's going to be huge. And so I'm going to go out there and get my awards and in front of everybody. I've never had the opportunity to actually receive one of my awards. I usually get them by the mail or by email.
Right.
So this will be, you know, the first time I get to do that. So I've already planned that I'm going to fall down. You know, just get that over with. I don't have to worry about it. Yeah, I'm going to be flat on my face, you know, or stumble through a speech I'm not going to make because that's really hard. But so that's just an opportunity that just I was able to do just because I was following what I'm doing in my life. And it's like, and I took a chance. I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to say no. So, okay, so I'll go try something else. But they didn't say no. They said, okay. And in fact, I had an interview with a lady. I've done a couple of interviews and she lives in Greece. And I was talking about the film festival. She's an author and she has a radio station for authors. And so I was telling her and she's like, well, I didn't know you could enter books and things. And I said, yeah. And so I showed her how to do it. She just won 2 awards and she did it. Her speech on Facebook last night and I saw it and I'm like, oh my gosh, you won. That's great. We just talked about this. So you don't know who you're going to connect with or influence or just give them some other idea. And that's something, you know, for everybody. It's not just an author, but anybody who's working with other people, whether it be volunteering in the hospital or the church or, you know, wherever you are, you're impacting someone. Right. So you have to kind of be aware of what it is you're doing and saying, because it does matter. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what that person needs. Like how many people, you know, in your day-to-day life knew that your son has a disability. And if you're just in the grocery store and he maybe is having some issues or whatever's going on, people don't understand that. They're like, well, he's just out of control or he's just having, you know, a behavior and, you know, he's having a temper tantrum or what, you know, whatever it is they're saying. But if you're out there and you're saying, this child, this is what we're doing, and then, oh, okay, I see now. I see a lot more compassion in the world now, I think, than I did, like, what you were saying in the 80s. I went to a very small high school, and I don't even know if we had anybody that was disabled in our high school. Like, it wasn't something, I live in a very small town, and I don't even remember any of that. My best friend's father had lost one of his arms, but we never even thought about that as being a disability or anything. He just kept on going, but it's our job to bring people into the world. And we're not only teaching our students, but we're teaching the community at large. If we're at the mall and we're getting something to eat, they'll talk to the adult, and you'll have to go, okay, what would you like? You need to speak up a little louder. They can't hear you. And then they'll address the child themselves, but they don't know what the ability of the child is.
Right.
So they don't, but then they get used to, and then it's the direct contact and stuff.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we're getting time to wrap up here for our Soulful Sunday. And of course, we've got her all week. So we've got some more interesting videos and things this whole week. We're going to interview with Dawn. And I think as a wrap up, I can see your passion too. You're excited about the path that you're on, and about sharing it, and like that, helping someone else to win awards that she never really thought she could win, So I think this is...
Didn't even know she could enter. And she's already won. It's like, oh my gosh, it's only been like 2 weeks.
And that's so infectious, that enthusiasm, and that's a great way to great reason to follow your passions, because that energy and excitement gets to be passed on to everybody. So thank you so much for joining us for Soulful Sundays, and we're going to see her tomorrow for Milestone Mondays, and actually hear about how we heard a snippet of how she achieved her milestone, but we're going to dive in that a little bit more tomorrow. So thank you for joining us today, Dawn, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you.